Hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao Ias Academy interview guidance program. So in today's lecture, we are going to discuss about India's complex neighborhood. So why I say India's complex neighborhood? So we very often hear about the issues related to India and its neighbors. For example, when we talk about India-Pakistan ties, cross-border terrorism is an issue between these two countries. India and Bangladesh, there is an issue of the interstate water or inter-country waters of Teesta River. So apart from that, insurgency is an issue. Now Bangladesh opposition party has also started running a campaign against India out campaign, similar to a campaign in Maldives. So that was a success in Maldives because the government which usually run the India out campaign came to power in last year. So therefore, Bangladesh opposition party leader Khaleda Zia has actually running an India out campaign. Now, apart from that, Sri Lanka has been hosting Chinese vessels, especially the surveillance and spy vessels. So that is a particularly a concern for India. And apart from that, we also have troubled relations with Myanmar because of military junta in Myanmar, and Nepal also, where there's a significant presence of China in terms of infrastructure development. And recently with Bhutan also, Bhutan has tried to normalize its ties with China, and that is also a concern. And in Afghanistan we have the Taliban regime. So that is not a democratic regime, that is a military regime. So therefore India has been facing a lot of challenges with respect to its neighborhood. So therefore in this context we will understand what issues India has been facing because of the complex neighborhood. What should be the way forward for India, how India can navigate these choppy waters, particularly in its neighborhood. In UPSC interview, the panel members very often ask about India's neighborhood. So this is very important topic for discussion. Now firstly, understand the rise of politically anti-India regimes in South Asia. So we have seen the rise of anti-India regimes, political regimes in South Asia in recent times. So one such example is Maldives. Okay, so where the new government is effectively asking Indians to leave the country, or the Indian troops, it has asked the Indian government to withdraw its troops. Around 72 Indian troops were stationed in Maldives. So apart from that, the Khaleda Zia-led government in Dhaka. So Khaleda Zia is an opposition leader of Bangladesh. So therefore the Khaleda Zia government, which goes to the elections early next year, could turn, actually the Khaleda Zia government, the Khaleda Zia party has not contested polls in Bangladesh in recently concluded Bangladesh polls. So therefore the Awami League of Sheikh Hasina has again came to power. However, now this Khaleda Zia government has started, the Khaleda Zia opposition party has started the India out campaign, taking inspiration from Maldives. So therefore this political party is also ideologically anti-India. Now if we talk about the structural dilemma that India has been facing, is Chinese growing influence in South Asia. So every country which has been sharing its border with India, there's a significant rise in Chinese influence, whether it is Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and even Maldives now. So therefore India has been facing structural dilemma with respect to China, because there is a significant increase or rise of Chinese power in the in the South Asia. So therefore the growing entanglement of regions, smaller states in the Belt and Road Initiative and other Chinese projects. So when we say that the Chinese influence, Chinese presence has been increasing in India's neighborhood, it effectively means that countries which shares its borders with China have been shares its border with India have been part of the Belt and Road Initiative. So the key project of Chinese President Xi Jinping. So therefore, all of these countries are part of the Belt and Road Initiative except Bhutan and other Chinese projects. So therefore, China has been significantly enhancing its presence and influence in South Asian countries. So that is particularly a concern for India. Now we need to talk about the Chinese outreach to other South Asian states. So what are the South Asian states? For example, India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar. So all those countries are considered as South Asian states. Now, the rest of the international community's engagement with the South Asia has, comparatively, it is a neglected region at the global level. So even though it is neglected by several major powers, Russia, US, Europe, or any other country, Chinese presence has been significantly increasing in this region. So why? Because China will have access to Indian Ocean, the first major benefit or the first major advantage. Secondly, China sees India as a major competitor and contender in future. So therefore, it is very important for China to contend or counter India in the region. So in order to counter India and in order to make India accept Chinese hegemony in the region, China has been trying to increase its influence in South Asia while this region was neglected or abandoned by other powers. Okay, so when we say that the South Asia is a complex or crisis hit, that is being evident from the fact that Taliban led Afghanistan. Taliban had taken over the government. Earlier there was a democratic government, but now the Taliban regime had overthrown the democratic regime. After that, there is a military ruled Myanmar. In Myanmar also there is no democracy. Now there is a military ruled Myanmar state. So this also poses significant challenges when it comes to India's engagement with Myanmar. India is not able to engage with the military regime, and the infiltration and the migration into Indian side is also a major problem. And since India is a democracy and a conflict or the violence in Myanmar is particularly a concern, because India has been maintaining a silence over what has been happening in Myanmar. After that, the crisis in Sri Lanka is also a major concern. Okay, so recently Sri Lanka has also faced a lot of economic crisis. Now it has been overcoming such crisis. So all these factors are main examples which have been pointing out the fact that India's neighborhood is a complex neighborhood and it is a crisis hit neighborhood. Now if you look at, or if you understand the overall impact of Chinese outreach, it is actually far higher than that India primarily as a function of deeper pockets. Okay, so Chinese presence or Chinese influence is it is more than India in the region, and it has been functioning as a deeper pockets. So China has been further extending its influence in the region. So apart from that, China also has a desire to settle its border disputes, so with its neighbors, particularly excluding India. So this has been seen in the case of Bhutan, and it is a strategy to win over the region. Now yes, China has a border disputes with majority of the countries in the region. However, China has no intention when it comes to settle the border disputes with India. On the other hand, it has been showing some interest to settle border disputes, especially countries like Bhutan. So it will help further strengthen its influence in the region. Okay, so therefore, what will be the impact on India if Chinese presence further increased in the region? What will be its impact on India? So the major impact will be, there's a chance that India will be geopolitically locked within an unfriendly South Asia. Okay, so India will be geopolitically locked in this region. So India has many aspirations. So if it is geopolitically locked and if its neighborhood is complex, then India's desires may not be able to be fulfilled. Now we need to understand the major causes behind these dilemmas India faces in the neighborhood. So what are the major causes behind the dilemmas that India has been facing in the neighborhood? So firstly, the regional geopolitical architecture. So regional geopolitical architecture, so it has been characterized by 5 overlapping elements or different overlapping elements. Now, if you look at the South Asia, the contemporary South Asia, it is characterized by a diminishing presence of United States. Now, US hegemony has been declining at a faster pace. Now, US has been receding from, countries where earlier it has a lot of presence. So, therefore, in South Asia also, US hegemony or US influence has been fast declining, and this vacuum has been filled by China. And if you talk about US presence, US is for a long time was a geopolitically constant in the region. So US was geopolitically stable and constant in the region. And for India, US presence in South Asia was not always advantageous. So US presence in South Asia is also not very advantageous, because US works in its own national interest rather than taking into account India's interest. Now US considers India as an ally. So even though it considers as an ally, but India has been maintaining the strategic autonomy when it comes to its engagement with US. So its departure definitely a disadvantageous. When we say departure of US, so recently US forces or US troops withdraw from Afghanistan. So that would be detrimental for India's interest. And now China has been filling the vacuum which has been created by US. And this is also a key concern for India, because Chinese influence in the region has been significantly increasing over a period of time. So increasing Chinese influence within South Asia and within Indian Ocean would have a lot of security implications and security threats for India. And in recent times, if you look at Chinese rise, China has an aggressive and stupendous rise. Okay, so this has come as a geopolitical buffer for the smaller states. Now, India is a major power in the region, in South Asia. But when Chinese influence has been significantly increasing within South Asia, so it has become an alternative for these smaller countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives. So they easily playing the Chinese card with India. So that is the reason why India has a complex neighborhood. Now China has emerged as an alternative for India, and this has enabled these countries to play the China card. Now, if you look at the policy stance of India, overall policy stance of India, so India very often exhibits a deep-seated status quo. So when it comes to dealing with region's domestic politics, so India is not very often involving in the domestic politics of those countries in its neighborhood. So therefore, this is also another factor which has been making India's neighborhood more and more complex. And the one-track policy. So what does it mean when we say one-track policy? So India has been very often engaging with only one party. Right? So for example, the recent Maldives example. So India has certain values, certain principles. So therefore, it has supported one political party, or it has maintained good relations with one political party. Now, when opposition came to power, the relations already started, damaging. Similarly, the opposition parties in Bangladesh have also been started the India out campaign. So therefore, this one-track policy of India has also generates path dependency. Okay, so alienating the other parties. One such example is Bangladesh. And strong belief in India that South Asia minus Pakistan. Now, if you look at India's engagement with South Asia, for example, BIMSTEC, the ineffectiveness of SAARC, it is primarily because India perceives South Asia as a region which has a lot of potential minus Pakistan. So because of this reason, India formed BIMSTEC. So therefore, it would be amenable to Indian geopolitical reasoning, which actually prompted an attempt to deal with proactively South Asia without Pakistan. So this actually means that Indian dispensation have a have a large desire to engage with all the countries in South Asia, but it wanted that South Asia minus Pakistan would be more stable or more fruitful for India's engagement, and this is what India's policymakers had actually thought of. Okay, so however, this policy has not benefited India like how it has imagined. Okay, so this has not benefited India. So India approached the neighborhood with the idea that India's special relationship with the region rooted in culture, soft power, history and ethnicity. Okay, so when we talk about India's approach or India's engagement with its neighboring countries, so its relationship, its special relationship is very often rooted, it is belief of India that it is rooted in culture, soft power, history and ethnicity. Now in this context, what should be the way forward? What India has to do in this present context, in this complex neighborhood? Now firstly, the old South Asia where India enjoyed primacy is no longer exists, because South Asia has become a dynamic region, and Chinese influence has also growing at a faster pace than what India thinks every day, right? So because of this reason, the old South Asia where India has enjoyed a lot of primacy, a lot of dominance, is no longer exists. So China has emerged as a serious contender for regional primacy. So that has been giving a lot of competition for India for its regional primacy. And after that, the realistic and pragmatic framing would help India to deal with the reality. We need to understand the reality, current geopolitical reality, rather than working in a mental frame where India's ties or India's engagement relationship are rooted in its culture, ethnicity, civilization, everything. Okay, so we need to act in a more realistic and pragmatic way. So India must proactively pursue the involvement of friendly external actors in the region. So the like-minded countries like Australia, Japan, South Korea and South Africa. So therefore, India should proactively pursue the involvement of friendly external actors in the region. So that could be beneficial for India. For example, Asia-Africa Growth Corridor is started by India and Japan together, right? So this will help India in the longer term to navigate this complex neighborhood challenge. So India's diplomacy must be flexible enough to engage multiple actors in each of the neighboring countries. Okay, so India's diplomacy should not look the South Asia from the past, from the prism of past. Rather, Indian diplomacy must be flexible enough to engage with different actors within the region and outside the region, especially the neighboring countries. Okay, so in this context, it is very important that India should learn to deal with countries in power, whoever in power. But engaging only with those countries who are in power is not a good policy. Okay, so therefore India should engage with all the like-minded countries where it help India further counter Chinese influence or Chinese presence in the region. India maintains good relations with all of its neighboring countries, and India can further increase its presence or influence beyond its neighborhood. So therefore, India's friendship with these like-minded countries or the like-minded nations is very crucial. So this is what the way forward has been for India's complex neighborhood. Okay, so that's all in this lecture. If you like our work, please like the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please write your suggestions and any other comments or doubts in the comment section. Thank you.